Hello, my name is Connor Quinlan, and in this review I'm going to be doing a review of JPEG versus RAW. Now, first thing I want to say is that this is a very touchy subject, and this review is not meant to be biased at all in any way. I'm using 100% truthful images, the same images taken at the same time, one in RAW 14-bit, one in JPEG 8-bit, and I put them right on my computer, and we're going to take a look at those in a little bit after I explain a little bit about JPEG and RAW. And we're going to take a look at the differences, because word is on the street today that with things like RAW in 14-bit, you can get amazing detail, dynamic range, color, and sharpness and image quality beyond anything that JPEG can even get close to, and that the difference is supposed to be extremely noticeable. Now, I do use JPEG and I don't use RAW very often, but you know, a lot of people are going to hold that against me, and I'm probably going to get a lot of crap for it in this video, but that's the way it is. And basically what I'm going to do is give some of the reasons why I believe that. We're going to take a look at the actual RAW data and JPEG data side by side. I'm going to do a little bit of processing on the RAW like you're supposed to, and to get as good of an image as I possibly can with it. First of all, before I get started though, I'm going to explain to you a little bit about both, and I'm also going to explain why I use JPEG instead of RAW. The reason I use JPEG is not because I think JPEG is better than RAW. That's a total lie, and people who say that to me they're just kidding themselves. The only reason that I use JPEG is I prefer not to edit my photos. With RAW, you really have no choice but to edit your photos. You gotta put it into the computer, make RAW adjustments, and then transform it into a TIFF file, whatever file you want, and process it in order to be printed. It's a long, complicated process in my opinion, and a lot of people enjoy doing that, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with editing your images. I don't think there's anything wrong with that, and I believe that if you want to edit your images and that's the way you get your good pictures, then that's the way you should do it, and I'm not saying there's anything bad about that at all. I personally just find that I like, my personal style is just not to edit my images, and I'm able to get a specific style of image straight from the camera that I can't really replicate in RAW. I've tried before and I've edited before, but I'm not necessarily that good of an editor anyway, and I've never been able to really replicate the style I've gotten with my JPEG images. So that's the reason I like to use JPEG instead of RAW. Not because I think JPEG's better, but simply because I just don't like to edit. For those of you who do like to edit and like to process your photos and change them up a bit to make them better, then definitely use RAW, because JPEGs, if you edit them even a little bit, you will lose data and image quality, and the quality will not be that good. And that's the reason why JPEG has suffered so much bad publicity lately, is because you simply don't want to edit your JPEG images. It's not that the JPEG image is bad when it comes straight from the camera, it's that it's just bad to edit a JPEG image, because that will lower the quality of the image. Alright, now we are going to compare the RAW and JPEG images side by side. Now here's the RAW image right up now, and here's all the information on the RAW image. 24.4 megapixel image, and it is a RAW image with 14-bit. So this is the highest quality RAW image you can get on the Nikon D3X. And as you can see, it's only 30 megabytes, which is quite surprising to me. And I thought it would be a lot larger than that at 14-bit. With processing, it probably will be larger, but that's pretty much straight from the camera with only some processing involved, which I'll explain later. And here's the JPEG version, as you can see, with all the same settings, except that the file size is 20 megabytes. Now actually, that's not much difference from the RAW image. It's only 9 megabytes smaller in terms of file size, and we're going to see just how much that 9 megabytes really makes a difference in the image. Now, this RAW image was post-processed. It was sharpened using sharpening mask. It was also adjusted slightly to match the white balance and exposure of the JPEG image. Now, this is a 14-bit image, so what we should see based on what people say about RAW images is that there should be a big difference in tonal range and color accuracy between these two images. Most importantly, tonal range, because the 14-bit image has tons and tons and tons more colors that it uses over the JPEG image, which is only 8-bit. However, the question is, can you really see that huge of a difference? Here we have the RAW image, and there's the JPEG image. RAW image, JPEG image. Now, the only real difference that I can see is that the JPEG is slightly sharper, and that is due to the sharpening in the camera. Now, you can get the raw image as sharp as the JPEG image, of course, and that's not what we're looking at here. We're looking at the tonal range, and as you can see just from looking at it, I don't see any difference between the raw and the JPEG. Even though the raw is 14-bit and the JPEG is only 8-bit, I don't see any difference whatsoever. And I'm not sure why this is. You'd think there'd be some sort of difference, but there really isn't. And basically the point that I'm trying to get across with this is that a lot of people say that RAW is so much better in general than JPEG. Well, this is not true. If you do not process or edit your JPEG photo, the JPEG will come out just as good as a raw 14-bit image with basically the same color accuracy. The only real difference is that the raw does seem to have a little more tone and a little bit more of a better changing in tone, but it's very, very slight, and practically there is no difference. The JPEG is a little bit harsher when it comes to tone, but it's so small. The difference is so small and so minimal that most viewers would not even notice this difference. And of course, it's not nearly as dramatic as a lot of people make it out to be. Of course, though, when RAW is most potent is when you're editing your images, and this is completely true, and that's why RAW is considered so much better than JPEG, is that when you edit your images, the RAW file does not decrease in image quality, whereas the JPEG image decreases heavily the more and more you edit. That's why it's very important that if you want to edit your picture, you use a RAW file. And for that, I suggest you actually use RAW plus JPEG, because this allows you to have a JPEG image just in case the picture is perfect as it is, and a RAW image if you need to process your image as well. Now, I prefer JPEG simply for the reason that I do not like to edit. I have nothing wrong, nothing against editing whatsoever. I think it's a great way to work with your pictures and to do things that you wouldn't normally be able to do with just the camera. But for my personal style, I prefer to just take pictures straight from the camera. And I also have never really been all that good at Photoshop, even though I've taken classes with it for 3 years. So Photoshop's not a big thing for me, and that's why I don't use it as much, and that is why I use JPEG. Yes, it's a lot tougher to get the picture in JPEG because with RAW, at least you can adjust it. And with most pictures need a little bit of adjustment, and RAW allows you to do that. Whereas with the JPEG, you're not able to do that, and if you do, you'll decrease the quality. And, well, that's just a risk I'm willing to take. And, yeah, I get pictures all the time that aren't good, and then I'm not going to be able to use simply because I can't edit them. And that's where the true usefulness of RAW comes in, is with editing. But the claim that RAW is overall better than JPEG, no matter what, is completely false. And that's the major point that I wanted to get across here. So we're going to take a look at some other areas of the image. Right here at the rocks is a good place. Here's the raw image. Here's the JPEG image. Now look at the tones of the rocks. We're not looking at the sharpness here. We're looking at the tone of the rock to see if the color's any different, to see if there's like a smoother transition with the raw between the colors. And there's the JPEG, and there's the raw. And looking right here, I don't see any difference whatsoever, not even a minimal difference. And we're viewing the picture at 100% view right now, and I just do not see that huge tonal difference that so many photographers talk about when using RAW. And yes, if you were a pro photographer and really good at spotting defects maybe in an image, yeah, you may see that the RAW is slightly better at tonal range or color or whatever, but in reality it's not the photographers or professionals that we want to please here. When we're taking pictures, we want to please the public, and the public eye is what matters. Our customers are what matters, the people buying our photos and looking at our photos and appreciating them as well. So when it comes to that, the viewers don't care about RAW or 14-bit or any of that. If you were to blow up an image, the RAW image and the JPEG images next to each other, these two images, I can guarantee you that the viewer would say that they see virtually no difference whatsoever. And just as a quick last minute thing, we're going to just take a look around this photo. We'll look at the cactus here. Here's the RAW image. There's the JPEG. RAW, JPEG. Virtually no difference that I can see. We're looking at this plant here. RAW and the JPEG. The RAW and the JPEG. I just simply do not see this dramatic difference that so many photographers talk about. And don't get me wrong here. I am all for RAW and stuff, and I realize that most people are actually going to use RAW. In fact, I encourage most people to use RAW, especially if you want to be able to edit your photos. It's very important if you want to edit your photos to use the RAW, because in JPEG you'll only decrease the quality. This is just me personally, and I'm just trying to prove the point that if a JPEG is unaltered, much different at least than the RAW file, even at 14-bit. So there are basically 2 points that I wanted to make in this video. Firstly, that this isn't about image quality. It wasn't about which one's better than the other. I'm not trying to do that in this video. What I'm trying to do is say that each format is for different types of people depending on how you like to shoot. If you don't edit and you don't like editing, then sure, you can use JPEG. But if you do like editing and you like post-processing your image then you definitely want to use RAW. And for actually most people, especially if you don't know, I would suggest that you use RAW plus JPEG and see where that takes you, and then choose which format you want to use in the future, or just use that one for the rest when you're taking pictures and stuff like that.